Ms. Rawls.
Present.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Present.
Ms. Bowers, I'm present. We have no communications this evening. We'll now open the floor for courtesy of the floor. Is there anyone to my right who would like to offer public comment? It wasn't included on our agenda.
Keisha George Williams, City of Harrisburg employee. I have some questions in regards to the CARES Act. I've been with the city for 15 years plus, and there are some major issues with me in this CARES Act. I worked the entire time. I was called to come in, was not compensated. I started out as a dispatcher in 2006 under technical services. So I was an emergency worker. Then when it was abolished and went to county, I decided to move on to the administrative side. And when I moved over to the administrative side, they changed my status to non-emergency. This CARES Act was in place and there was issues with that because I was forced to come in and I was the only person on financial management that did not get paid. I wasn't compensated for, in addition, for a health emergency. That's an issue for me. I've been trying to get communication to get a grievance going in regards to this process. I feel as though that is a political affiliation. I was red circled because I was once the president of my union for 2 terms, and everything has been disrespectful as far as trying to get communication regarding the monies that relate to me. Now, I'm not concerned about what management get. I'm just concerned about the things that I deserve to be compensated for. That's the CARES Act. Auditor 2 is my position, my current position. There are 3 auditors in that position. 1 auditor 2 was paid, compensated for the CARES Act. The other 2 weren't, myself and someone in Treasury. We weren't compensated, and that's the issue. That's a violation. And once again, that we should have been covered. There's a whole lot of money that we're talking about out here, and police got compensated, fire got compensated, management got compensated, the board of ASME got compensated. That's the entire president, vice president, e-board. 70% of the members got compensated. The members that work in this facility at city government, 30% did not get compensated. The issue is because of remote for the union members only. Well, remote was for managers. When this first started out, my boss and myself were the only ones in the office for financial management. And once again, we were forced to come in. There was something mentioned about where is everybody else for financial management. Then they started gradually coming in. I know it's CARES Act, but it's my concern that it was a health emergency. I should have had an option to either be laid off, have some discussion. There was an email that was sent on a Sunday regarding CARES Act, and they need to communicate with the membership on what's taking place and what's going on regardless. You don't send an email on Sunday and expect the membership to do whatever. Now, everybody else have communication. My boss and I don't have anything personal, but when it comes to business, he and I are not on the same page. You know, I think it's discrimination and I think it's harassment involved, and I have a problem with this, and I've been trying to get this taken care of from day 1 of COVID. I process work for COVID. Businesses and residents are compensated for COVID, and I do not have a problem with that. I'm on a 1%, 2%, 3% raises here and there, and I work every day. My bills didn't stop. My car payment I had to pay, my mortgage I had to pay, my utilities I had to pay. And I saw all this money going through to residents, which if they need it and deserve it, I don't have a problem with it. But if I'm processing it and the funds and money is there for the CARES Act, I feel as though I should be compensated. I was a dispatcher for the police I was here in June and I had a conversation about the resolution for 47 and 48. The chairperson that now is the mayor, I don't have any problems with her. She tried to get PMS in here. PMRS came in, met, talk about IRS issues and how the things wouldn't affect anything else. The contract that I have in regards to PMRS, I do my homework and I know the language very, very well. It was not an agreement. There was things that was off. I don't know if y'all did a comparison of what PMRS had prior to what I have for PMRS, but it did not line up and match up. I have a police pension. This goes back to 2006. Act 47 caused a lot of things to be delayed and pushed under the rug because we were in Act 47 of financial distress. I'm concerned about my pension on the police side because I know I have it because technical services fell under police. The people that are in rank file now is around the time, the years that I've been in service. Now, I haven't received any information. Water and sewer was with the city. Management failed to manage water and sewer. So now it's at Capital Region Water. Capital Region Water has 2 separate pensions, and it's just not with city anymore. They have language in the agreement in regards to their pension and things of that language. There's no language other than a brief little bit about communication or as a dispatcher under technical service. Now, I've questioned that in the agreement book for ASME side. There's police information that was there for the agreement. And also I know that I paid into pension information several times matched, and things have changed throughout the year. Okay, I'm under the Reid administration. I don't know if that makes any difference. I know there are council members that have changed, the administration have changed, but these are major, major issues with my pension, and I should not be paying into a pension, and no one has answered me in regards to those questions. I know I have multiple ones, and I'm 54, I'm not ready to retire, but I want my information, because it's personal to me. I need to know where my numbers are before I leave the building for the final time. People leave, there are class action grievances out there with unfinished business behind retirement. And that's sad. That should never be. People retire, they expect to move on with their life, carry on living. With COVID, we talked about those issues. Police, they talk about the CSAs, and I was a dispatcher. That was one of the functions as a CSA. 3 directors trying to figure out what to do for a department. The atrium people that are receptionists that fall under like the 311 phone calls and the ticketing and all the information. I understand. I'm not against police. I don't want to go against police. I feel as though they need as many as they can possibly get. They do a wonderful job at what they're doing, but they need to respect everybody in the seat. And there needs to be communication on that. And I have a parking issue. I get off at 4:15 every day. And I think I'm blackballed. I think I'm the bad child on the block or something, because when I get off at 4:15, I have to sit in the lobby to wait to go over City Island. I don't want to walk over City Island in the wintertime. I don't want to walk over at City Island when it gets cold. There were incidents that happened with the codes people that parked down at this parking lot over here with their parking. Now the homeless gave them a fit. I communicated with HR. They did nothing to communicate to ask me, was I all right, or what can be done? There's nobody in my department that is responsible for a vehicle. Most employees at City Government Center has a vehicle because this is a unique situation. All the other entities have parking right outside the door or right next door. Here is parking next door, but that's for management. I'm told they have to pay for a space. City Island, if I can just get a ride over, but I have flagged down employees and they ignored me. I have asked management and they refuse to pick me up. And here and there, I can get a ride. Now, a lieutenant gave me a ride from the police department, and I'm appreciative of it, but I've been with the company for 15 years, and I allow people to get in the seat after I got out, asked me to seat, and I respect a little bit of respect. I mean, I want respect. I give it, I'm not disrespectful. I was not cocky and arrogant once I left the seat, and I allowed them to get the ability to learn what they were doing as far as president and all the board members to do the things they need to do. And I pulled back and stepped away. Now, I don't know if they felt bad that I just left and didn't do anything. They did nothing for me, so I left the union. I left. I was a fees paid union member, and now I'm not. But as far as Janice and AFSCME is concerned, I have rights. I requested to have the negotiation information so I can understand where I stand as far as my information. They negotiated some things that I'm really not in agreement as far as the payouts and the CARE Act money that was paid out. The taxes on top of that chops it up. You have to know what to do with that. That should be broken down in several checks, not a lump sum. I don't want a lump sum. I have a check in my bag. That's a bonus check. My bank said I can hold it for 6 months. I intend on asking the administration if they take that back and break it down for me. I don't want almost $900 of taxes taken out of something that's supposed to be a bonus. I'm not interested in that. So if anybody can do anything in regards to that, I appreciate it. I'm hoping I can get some assistance with council. I appreciate everything that you guys have been doing. You have been asking questions for the residents as well as yourself to get a better understanding of that. I'm real appreciative of that, and I hope that I can get some responses in regards to my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on the right who would like to offer public comment? Is there anyone in the middle section that would like to offer public comment?
Hello. Can you hear me, Polk? Sorry. Good evening to council and members of administration. Thank you for the buzzer presentation that we've been able to go over the last few nights. I've been tuning in virtually, so thank you for that option. We appreciate that. We still do want to have a way for people who cannot make it to submit public comment, just putting that back out there. Respectfully, I just wanted to give a few comments on the budget presentation so far. I think the biggest concern that people have seen so far is the CSA program. Very much concerned about the lack of information, even after yesterday's presentation, coming from our police bureau on the actual duties of the additional the current CSAs, and the need for 5 more CSAs. I think that the CSA program, and not just myself, other members of the community that we have been working with, is a program that could be very beneficial. It is still in its infancy of stages, and it sounds like there's still a lot of change happening, and stabilizing the program first seems very important before adding more people to those roles. So I just wanted to put that comment there. Additionally, I know there's some talk around possibly putting a mental health or medical health arm under the public safety. While it is public safety, those in the healthcare and health field absolutely believe that good health care and access to health care is a matter of public safety. I think we should also consider that it maybe needs to be its own department and that it's not connected to a department that already has a very strained trust relationship with the residents of Harrisburg. ARPA funds, on the point of ARPA funds and sustainability. While we are discussing how to use the ARPA funds to fill a lot of gaps, and that is allowed by the regulations, we should, and I know we don't have a lot of time, like I know this has to be solidified, I think, in a few days, but I would love for us to find other solutions to mitigate the cost without spending down ARPA funds to fill those deficits, those loss in revenue. Maybe not planning for new positions right now, maybe not doing new things until we can figure out how to bring, really think about the other sources of revenue generation for the city. And also think about, the departments of the city that can help us bring in new revenue, like our grants department. Maybe having maybe bolstering that department a bit so that we can actually plan for, some funding streams that will last beyond this one-time fund that we have. Because what happens after those funds are gone, and how will we, in the next couple of years, if we don't plan for that now, how will we continue to meet those gaps if we are just trying to plug that stuff with that one-time ARPA funds that we're getting? So that's something to consider. Also, maybe we could do another session before you guys vote. I know that of the sessions we've had so far, we spent a lot of time on the police bureau and the public safety portion of the budget. And I'm sure we'll get most of it done, but maybe having another session for any other questions and comments, particularly from the public. While our police bureau's budget and personnel and the other pieces that go with sustaining that entire arm of the city is much larger than some of the departments, I think that especially the public would appreciate some more of how the budget is understood in other departments, how the leaders are conceptualizing those budgets in a little more detail. And then lastly, I would also like to remind us that the People's Budget Organizing Group through the Harrisburg Abolition Table, or HAT, has been organizing the community around the pieces of the budget that we think are important and what we want to see addressed. So I would love to ask and just plead with both the administration and council to please give the People's Budget Organizing Group a true voice in this process as well. We are hearing that there's going to be a more transparent budget process, which we are very thankful for. So we're just hoping that you guys will include the People's Budget Organizing Group, who are residents of the city, in these processes, so that we can get more of the residents in here, particularly because, as you can see, 3 nights in a row is a lot of work to listen to the budget, but there are people who are very interested in this, who are watching online, who are coming to people that they trust in the community, not that they don't trust all of you, but different folks have different rapport and different relationships. And I think reaching as many people as we can through organizing groups who are doing such great work in the community would be a really great opportunity for both the administration and for council. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the middle section that would like to offer public comment? Anyone to my left that would like to offer public comment? Seeing none, we will continue with our agenda. We do not have any ordinances for first reading. We do have an ordinance for amendment. That's Bill 2 of 2022, which is an ordinance establishing the amended budget pursuant to section 11810 of the Third Class City Code for the municipal government of the city of Harrisburg for the year 2022. May I have a motion to suspend the rules for discussion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. This is relative, or for the administration rather. We wanted to provide the public an opportunity to learn how we arrived at this amendment.
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this. This amendment is complete and adds the additional critical positions and services that we believe will improve the opportunity for the city to execute and provide efficient and effective services.
I will defer to Vice President Green.
Now, I do have a couple of questions just to kind of narrow it down a little further for the public's benefit. The budget that we received last week, the exhibit that was included, if I'm correct, there were some things missing, such as like the line by line personnel items that had to be in the budget. And this budget includes them, correct?
That's correct.
Along with that, we've added in some positions and, if I'm correct, increased the budget by a good amount. Do you know how much we've increased the budget from last week to this week? If it's under the general fund section, I think it's about 1.3 million.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chair Green. In summary, on the resource side, which includes the revenues of all the funds, we're increasing. The only fund that's increasing on the revenue side really is the Neighborhood Services Fund. And that's primarily due to expenses going in the public works piece, rising from approximately 17 million to 18 million. When we developed the initial submission last week before this week, we took a look at the initial asks of the various departments and did a thorough review based on revenues. Came back with, in the Neighborhood Services Fund, again, the Public Works piece of 17 million. And then the information was further reviewed. Input was received from Public Works Department levels, further evaluated, which prompted us to affect these changes in the expenditure lines. So that increased the Neighborhood Services Fund piece, which includes also parks maintenance and the borough municipalities. All the other funds, there's no change in revenue or resources on that particular page of the exhibit, the amended Exhibit A. On the expenditure side for the general fund, we initially proposed a budget of 69.9 million, and that has now increased to 71.3. Also, I mentioned the Neighborhood Services Fund. That, the expenses there increasing from approximately 17 to 18 million, and that also the revenue really isn't increasing. This to bridge that, there is an increased use of fund balance for the Neighborhood Services Fund, which approximates $1 million. Originally, the first submission, we approximated $300,000. So the increase of $1 million is included now in the amended exhibit. The other fund that's experiencing increase would be the Host Fee Municipality Fund. And that's a very small increase. It's going from approximately $351,000 to $351,200. So it's very small. Any further comments or questions on those particulars?
I think that's what I have at this moment. I will pass it to Councilman Majors.
Yeah, so I think where a lot of the reason that this amendment is necessitated is due to us having, several different iterations of documents. And while I think you're speaking to some of those changes, but I mean, we are seeing there are more changes outlined versus what was initially proposed in that February 1st document versus the document that is before us, the document that we've been working off of in terms of moving forward. So I think Vice President Green was talking about the differences between the document that is currently Bill 2 of 2022 versus the documents that were included. Said there are differences in those numbers versus what was already currently outlined. So we are seeing significant increases, and I think we'll speak to them as we look at this proposed amendment.
And that's correct, Councilman Majors. And you can actually refer back to the amended exhibit in the expenditure schedules. in the document, there's highlights, there's yellow highlights of the changes comprising these increases. I mean, most of them are increases. I believe there are a few decreases. But if you would go, if you would refer back to those expenditure schedules within, starting with the general fund, you can go to any particular budget unit and find a column for the original proposed.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. And again, there's just a lot of confusion. I think I don't want to speak to the potential amendment yet because we're not even talking about that yet. But
sure.
Yeah, any other comments I'll have will be once we move that process forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of my fellow council members have additional questions?
I have a question. I know throughout the entire process, it's been a very tight time frame. Can you maybe speak a little bit to the logistics as to how various bureaus and departments provided information for you to review, to get the budget? Because it seems like, I don't know, I just get the sense that the time crunch was put a lot of strain, I feel like, on a lot of directors, and seems like you got a lot of information, maybe, I don't want to say last minute, but not within a perfect time frame. And so I don't know who could speak to that, but just sort of what you had to deal with within the, since you onboarded essentially, and systems that were in place and how you received information.
Well, fortunately, this budget process actually had two opportunities for the department heads to meet with us. We met with them when we very first came on board for the first round of budgets. And they made us gave some suggestions and we had a nice lengthy discussion with all the department heads. And then after the first introduction of the budget last week, the next day we had another meeting with every department head, sat down with them, discussed, had a very open discussion. So I do think that we did have good rapport, good discussion, good processes to allow them to have input and provide excellent input. And some of that input was what was the catalyst to do the amendment, because they're like, I understand we need to balance budget, but there's some critical positions that could impact services. So they kind of taught us that there's, you know, that there needs to be a balance between how you have a sound budget and how you also include the level of services that those intelligent bureau chiefs would provide to us. So we did have the two sets of dialogues, which I thought was advantageous to both of us. I mean, to the whole team. So I was glad that that was an opportunity for them to have some input and to provide guidance to us as well, because they're the experts on their own operations.
I'll also add, just to speak on some items within that, within the personnel items. When we had been given the personnel sheets, none of the calculations for even the programmed in union increases for AFSCME, FOP, and IAFF for the firefighters, none of that work was done. So we had to start out from scratch and actually hand calculate all of those with HR and payroll to get those put into the budget, because there was a lot of work that is typically done in the months and months prior to. We were kind of crunched in having to do a number of different things simultaneously, which makes it even more difficult, because as you're doing revenue and you're costing out personnel and a number of other increases while also asking what their requests are and their wants, while then having to balance that with what we need to do to get things in line. There's just a lot of moving pieces and a lot of things that can go bump, almost like a speed bump in the road. Marita did as good a job as she could have with managing that. But there are a lot of things that weren't done leading up to this point that we had to do starting on January 3rd. And, you know, I will say we did have some great allies in the controller's office to really help us go through all of those numbers, just because the sheer amount of numbers that had to be crunched between the three of us and some help from a few others. It was quite a bit. Every individual line item had to be done Calculations had to be done for all of them. And then double checked, and then obviously triple checked. So getting to there was a lot of difficult things that had to be done simultaneously with it.
Yeah, so I think the fact that we had to make changes after we've already had a complete budget was, kind of added to the complexity a little bit, but I think it's for the betterment of the city. So it was well worth having those further discussions with the department heads, listening to them, taking in their input, having the mayor and the BA involved. And I do think that the end product is good, despite the fact that it might have been a little painful getting here for everyone. But I do think the end product is going to give you a sound, balanced budget that moves you forward without any use of fund balance for the general fund, which is nothing short of a miracle, because that hasn't happened in a dozen years or more. So in order to pass a budget without impacting your general fund balance is noteworthy effort by this council and this administration.
So I want to rewind to a little bit over a year ago. Council was talking with the current administration. The HR department had told us that we weren't offering a competitive salary to maintain I want to make sure I use the right word. Bruce Weber's old role was the budget director, right? Finance director, apologies. And that was concerning then. And as far as I know, the position never got filled. Did that lead to that position not being filled, hardship on your end, which you had to come in and fix things? What those items were?
Yes, and there's also a few other positions that there was some turnover over time within the offices underneath there. And Brian, you could probably speak a little bit more to the continuity, over that period. But yes, a lot of work that would have been done in the months leading up to like the October, November, even September. A lot of that stuff had to be done in the beginning of January, which required a heavy lift from HR and a number of other people.
That's true with the departure of previous finance director, Bruce, around about the middle of 2020. And at that point, budget process was in its initial stages for 2021. And the then business administrator, that was Mark Woolley, was working with our two previous actually budget managers. And we worked through that to get the 2021 budget done, of course, under somewhat normal conditions with the budget manager in place and Mark having experience with the previous year's budget. But then the budget manager at that time left right near the end of December of 2020. At that point, we did not have a new budget manager until April of 2021 when she began. And she primarily worked, reported back to Mark. And Dave, this is just timeline. I mean, you may already know this, but again, there were departures again last year with Mark leaving at the beginning of November. And then the new budget manager who had been here approximately 7 to 8 months, she left at the very end of December of last year. And all along, the finance director position had remained vacant for essentially the better part of a year and a half. In our finance department too, we did have a financial analyst who worked on the 2021 budget, but then she left the city back in June of 2021. So there's a lot of depletion there of key people that were hands-on with the budget. My role as accounting manager was, I know the mechanics obviously, of the accounting system and the budget functioning. But of course, that position really is meant to be what it's originally laid out to be. It's a full-time, hands-on position. So with our staff being down, and again, lack of the finance director position not being able to be filled. I know Mark made efforts to recruit, but he didn't have any success in bringing somebody in. So with all that, as we approach 2022 and realize from the end of December, which lack of a budget manager on hand, I did not anticipate that. You really can't, but that's the way it happened. And as a result, that creates the time frame we had to produce a budget document for your review and presentation. That's the overview on that timeline.
I just think with a lot of the changes, I'm just trying to paint a picture for the public as to what this administration had inherited or dealing with, just so you just get a full view.
A better understanding
yeah.
of players on the field, so to speak.
Exactly. That's it for me.
Thank you. Are there any other additional questions, comments?
I don't really have any further questions, but I do have just a few comments. I feel like I just kind of need to get it out there so I can move on. Thank you all for your hard work. It's very much appreciated. Thank you. I understand the tight timeline, but being handed an incomplete budget does not make it easy to do our job. It actually makes it impossible. And then for it to be corrected, although that's helpful, it makes it hard for us to take the time and do the due diligence to analyze what needs to be analyzed before a budget must be passed on February 15th. And it absolutely does no service to the citizens of Harrisburg. The changes, although some are tracked, a lot of them are not. When we were handed the amended version, sometimes you're looking back and forth trying to make sure everything that is marked as changed is in there and that you're not missing things. Trying to look at the overall numbers and see what the change is. It does no service to the citizens of Harrisburg. It does no service to us as we try to analyze this. And I understand that you guys took on a really heavy lift to get this done in the short amount of time, knowing that budgets are usually done over months and months and you guys had weeks. But I mean, getting a new document every single night it's just not acceptable. It's not conducive to good business. It's not conducive to good budgeting. And it just doesn't make sense. Let alone looking at some of these numbers on other sheets and trying to reconcile everything. As we get mixed messages about art money, we're not using art money, we may use art money, what art money, it just kind of all becomes convoluted and does not provide for a clear and transparent budget process that we promised, that the administration promised to people. City Council is working to try to make for sure that happens. And we're trying to make for sure that as things come about, we're letting the public know. And for that reason, I think that's the only reason we're even looking at introducing this amendment tonight, is so that the public can actually have access to it, so it becomes a public document. But this process has been, it hasn't been a good process so far. I look forward to in the future us making for sure that this process never looks like this again. And I guess that's kind of my comment. It's not good. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a comment.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for their hard work during this process. I know it wasn't the easiest thing to overcome. And as we shift towards a better Harrisburg and a productive budget for the residents, I just pray that by even introducing a firm to us to deal with the ARPA funding before we even have our own city's budget, I hope that isn't a sign of the priorities of the future. But I have great hopes, and I know we'll be able to work in collaboration to get things done for the residents. So thank you guys once again. But it was sort of challenging to deliberate. But thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to return to the special legislative session.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Okay, so now again, before us, we have Bill 2 of 2022. I'll just read it again for everyone's benefit. An ordinance establishing the amended budget pursuant to section 11810 of the third class city code for the municipal government of the city of Harrisburg for the year 2022.
As amended.
Yes, I know I was getting to that. At this time, I will entertain a motion for an administrative and corrective amendment at the substitute of an amended Exhibit A.
So moved. And I will second it.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded. Mr. Grover, will you please read the amended Exhibit A into the record?
I will, and I will, for a procedural point, say that there probably should be a motion before we start reading to waive the reading of the amended book because we will be here until Tuesday.
Thank you for the reminder. I will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the amendment book that was previously received.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
That requires a vote.
We will move forward with a vote. And this is to waive the reading of the amended book previously received. Ms. Daniels? Yes. Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Madsen?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Rawls?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Bowers? Yes. The motion passes.
And with that, Madam President, I will commence. My intention is to go and read all of the amendments through unless you prefer me to do it in some other manner.
No, thank you. I'd appreciate it if you could please read all of the amendments through.
Yes. Bill 2, number 2022, as amended, line 16, section 1, general fund. The total amended number is $71,294,728. It's from lines 19 and 20. The same figure is then spelled out as required in the law, $71,294,728. On line 23 for general government, the amendment is $2,730,821. For line 27, the amendment is $94,200 for the services line item under City Council. The total for City Council on line 30 is amended to $485,088. Under the Mayor's Office, line 33, personnel is amended to $384,633. Under line 34, under services under the Mayor's Office, the amount is amended to $28,782. On line 737, the total Mayor's Office is amended to $427,000 or $427,415. On line 54 in the Solicitor's Office personnel, the line is amended to $455,050. On line 55 services, the line is amended to $264,170, still under the Solicitor's Office. On line 58, the total City Solicitor's Office budget line item is amended to $772,850. Under Bureau of Communications, line 61, personnel is amended to $331,210. On line 65, The total communications budget is amended to $379,260. On line 73, Department of Administration, the total is amended to $4,237,159. On line 76, under the Office of Business Administrator Personnel, the line is amended to $199,153. On line 80, total for Business Administrator is amended to $200,228. On line 91, under Bureau of Information Technology for Services, is amended to $937,278. On line 92, for supplies under Information Technology, the line is amended to $417,900. On line 94, total information technology budget is amended to $2,489,166. Under the Bureau of Human Services, on line 97, personnel is amended to $409,264. On line 98, services under Human Resources, the line is amended to $118,275. On line 101, for the total Human Resources budget, the amended number is $539,739,000. Under the Bureau of Licensing, Taxation, and Central Support, on line 104, personnel is amended to $414,147. On line 106, supplies, still under the same bureau, the amendment is for $67,651. On line 108, total budget for licensing, taxation, and central support is amended to $756,978. Under the Bureau of Business Development, on line 111 for personnel, the amendment is for $159,298. On line 115, total business development, the line is amended to $173,748. On line 118, Department of Budget and Finance, the total is amended to $685,551. Under the Bureau of Financial Management, on line 121, personnel, the line is amended to $454,251. On line 125, still under Bureau of Financial Management, the total budget is amended to $685,551. On line 127, Department of Parks, Recreation, and Facilities, the total is amended to $3,406,027. On line 130, under Bureau of Parks and Recreation, personnel, the line is amended to $1,216,565. On line 131, services of Parks and Recreation is amended to $937,846. Under line 134, the total Parks and Recreation budget is then amended to $3,406,027. On line 136, Department of Public Safety, the line is amended to $30,945,735. On line 146, for the Bureau of Police personnel, the line is amended to $16,828,879. Line 150, total for the Bureau of Police for the budget is $19,561,030. On line 153, under the Bureau of Fire for personnel, the line is amended to $9,481,114. Under line 155, still under fire, the supplies is amended to $339,565. Under line 157, total for the Bureau of Fire for the year, $10,345,979. For line 159, Department of Engineering and Planning, the line is amended to $3,116,539. For line 162 under Office of Director, Personnel, the line is amended to $761,416. On line 166, total for the Office of the Director, the total budget for the year is $2,831,516. Under Bureau of Planning, line 169, personnel is amended to $193,023. On line 173 for planning, the line is amended to $285,023. On line 175, Department of Public Works, the line is amended to $3,162,029. On line 178, under the Bureau of Vehicle Management, the line is amended to $398,965. Still under the Bureau of Vehicle Management, line 179, services is amended to $1,262,341. Line 181, other, is amended to $105,498. On line 182, the total for vehicle management is amended to $3,162,029. Under Section 3 of the budget, host municipality fee funds, line 214, the total is amended to $351,154. On lines 216 and 217, the same amendment is made, spelled out, for $351,154. On line 222, under host municipality fee funds, personnel, the line for personnel is amended to $199,154. Line 225, other, still under host municipality fee funds, is amended to $52,000. Total municipal fees funds is then on line 226, changed to $351,154. Line 239, Section 5, Neighborhood Services Fund, the total is amended to $18,029,799. On lines 241 and 242 is the same amendment written out, $18,029,799. On line 247 under the Bureau of Neighborhood Services, personnel is amended to $4,757,175. Under line 248, services is amended to $9,180,832. On line 249, supplies is amended to $693,675. And under line 251, total for city services is amended to $14,972,685. Under the Bureau of Neighborhood Services, line 254, personnel is amended to $1,333,339. Under line 258, total park maintenance services, the line is amended to $2,110,814. Under Section 8, Neighborhood Mitigation, under line 310, under Neighborhood Mitigation Fund, personnel is zeroed out. Under line 311, under services, it is amended to $58,900. That particular amendments did not alter the total for that. It was a correction. The underline 324 under Special Events and Projects Reimbursement Fund, services is amended to $1,000. Under line 325, supplies is amended to $29,000. Again, those changes did not amend the total for that section. Under Section 16, estimated resources for 2022, On line 404, Neighborhood Services Fund, the amendment of estimated resources is to $18,262,224. On line 424, total 2022 proposed budget, the line is amended to $113,070,503. Under Section 18, and this is a new Section 18, amendment to Position and Control Office of the Mayor. Added from line 435 to 440, reads as follows. The confidential secretary position established in the Office of the Mayor and identified on page 33 of amended Exhibit A to this ordinance shall be reclassified from the confidential secretary to have a new title of, quote, Special Assistant to Director of Equity and Compliance, end quote. References to the confidential secretary within the Office of the Mayor shall be deemed to refer to the Special Assistant to Director of Equity and Compliance. On line 443, prior Section 18 is renumbered to Section 19. Under line 447, prior Section 19 is renumbered to Section 20. Under line 456, prior Section 20 is renumbered to Section 21. And under line 460, prior Section 21 is renumbered to Section 22. The longest single thing I've ever read in this room.
Thank you, Mr. Grover. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns before we move forward with this vote?
Yes, kind of a comment. I would just ask that the administration that's here, if you could just verify that the numbers in this updated schedule or updated exhibit are correct, and we won't be expecting any other changes coming down.
We collectively go, yes.
Yes, that is true.
That's the only question that I have.
I have a question and a comment. So the general fund, the amended number for the general fund in Section 1, and that's on page 1. And then on, I'm not sure what page this is, the second to last page, under Section 16 of estimated resources, the general fund number is not the same.
Yeah, that's the amount of revenue and resources we have on Section 16.
Okay.
So that highlights a bit of a surplus, which would be $1 million.
Is an expectation. I just wanted to make sure.
Yep, 1.3. That's right. Yep.
Okay, thank you for your response. I do have a comment. I'm really trying to extend some grace to the new administration and the new complement within the finance department. However, given the level of expertise that we have in this room right now surrounding a budget, I'm very disappointed, to say the very least. As Vice President Green, our Budget and Finance Chair, stated, we are only moving forward with this substitute of an amended Exhibit A for the benefit of the public. Had we postponed this special legislative session to Monday, the public wouldn't even see this. And we owe everything to the public. It's only right that they have an opportunity to view and understand, I guess, what we're trying to comprehend in a matter of 2 hours. So moving forward, I know I can't expect perfection, but with the level of expertise that has been touted throughout these budget hearings, I hope that this is not an indication of how we will move forward, either working together or just being quite dysfunctional in our presentation of future budgets, future budget amendments, anything relative to these numbers, because we can't play with the livelihood of our residents and we can't gamble with things like this in the future. At this time, I will call the vote for Bill 2 of 2022, which is an ordinance establishing the amended budget pursuant to section 11810 of the Third Class City Code for the municipal government of the city of Harrisburg for the year 2022. An administrative and corrective amendment at the substitute of an amended Exhibit A. Yes.
We're just voting on adopting the amendment, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I didn't want it to.
You're not adopting a budget.
We're not adopting a budget. We are simply focused on
Bill 2 of
2022, the amendment.
Correct. An administrative and corrective amendment at the substitute of an amended Exhibit A, which was this, which we received.
Right. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. I will now call the vote. Ms. Daniels? Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Madsen?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Rawls?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Bowers? Yes. The amendment passes. There are no ordinances for final passage at this time. The time is 7:47 p.m. We will adjourn. We will now call to order our third City Council budget meeting at 7:47 p.m. I will conduct a roll call. Ms. Daniels. Here. Ms. Green.
Present.
Mr. Madsen.
Here.
Mr. Majors.
Here.
Ms. Rawls.
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Present.
Ms. Bowers. Present. I will now turn the meeting over to our Budget and Finance Committee Chair, Vice President Green.
Thank you, President Bowers. I will now ask the administration for their presentation. I believe tonight we will be starting with engineering.
That's correct, Madam Chair. Thank you. The first question from City Council, for the Department of Traffic and Engineering, why is the line item 421050 zeroed out? Most of these costs will be accounted for under general engineering since the primary contract with Dowwood is for engineering services. You can see some of the detail below related to the next question, if I may.
Yes.
Why is there significant increase in the consulting line item for engineering? The increase will cover up to a year's worth of expenses as it relates to contracting out our city engineering position due to our inability to fill the engineer position at this time. We have it posted and are currently trying to recruit, but this creates a contingency plan that will allow us to continue moving projects. The contract currently in front of you for Dowwood Engineering would cover this.
I will start with my colleagues. Are there any questions on the two responses just provided? Councilwoman Rouse?
Yes, I was wondering, okay, so we're contracting the services out. Are we actively looking for an engineer? Or we're contracting them out for a whole year and then we're looking for permanent city engineer?
Well, I think the goal is that we've had a great difficulty interviewing and attaining an engineer. And we have multiple engineering services that have been postponed, which really can't be postponed. So the goal is to bring the Dowwood Engineering firm upon board. This is a vote that will be on Tuesday's agenda, I believe. And in the meantime, recruit for the engineering candidate. And of course, bringing a sophisticated engineer into a multifaceted, departmental operation, it would be helpful if when we do hire the engineer, if the Dalwood Engineering would stay on board for some period of time, we don't know exactly what that would be, in order to cross-train, bring the person up to speed, make sure that all of the engineering components are fully executed, reports are filed, engineering documents signed properly, and so forth. So it'd be an opportunity to have that good, healthy transition that will allow for the new engineer to come on board and be ready to go full speed ahead.
And to further clarify things, it is currently posted, the position. We have yet to receive a single applicant that has an active PA license or Pennsylvania PE license. We're still actively looking. Joni has been working diligently on that. If you look in the budget, the item in the salary complement is listed as 0 for engineer. What the plan would be is then to move over money from the consulting line once we have an idea of when this would be through a budget reallocation, working with council on that when things start taking shape. But she has not had a single bite for even submitting a resume for a person with a PE license.
Okay, because that was my next question. You did answer it about how the funds would move. Will we be paying a city engineer and still paying Dalwood at the same time that a new one came on, and how that would look? But you said you would take money over from the consultant portion. Is Dalwood the only company that will be presented to us?
It was handled through an RFP, Neil. It was done prior to us taking office, I think.
In 2021, after a lot of discussion, the Bureau of Engineering, Procurement, Business Administrator's Office, and the Law Bureau worked on a very sort of extensive RFP for general engineering services. The concept at the time wasn't to have them instead of the city engineer, but there are many things that we have in the pipeline. It was anticipating lots of things, including the road work we have, infrastructure. They got scored and they were ready to go late in the year, frankly, right before Mr. Woolley departed. So all of those proposals were in place and ready to go when the new administration came in, and those selections and scores were looked at. And Dogwood, if I'm saying that right, was the one that had scored the best from the panel. It was also someone who's also done work for the city in the past. So they were selected. We are amending what they do to give that general engineer actual seal for the city for a period of time, which is one of the things that is permitted under the third-class city code. You can have an engineer or an engineering firm. There was, my understanding, one period in the past where we had an engineering firm temporarily serve as the office of engineer. It is a highly demanded skill set, as you probably all know. And so getting a new city engineer will be probably a significant undertaking.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions? Councilman Majors.
Yes, and I don't remember. Do you happen to remember what the cost was of what we're budgeting for the contracted services? Is that 35 or we 425, excuse me, 15, sorry, my math is on.
150,000.
150. So we already had, we had budgeted the previous year 35. That was when we did have a city engineer.
Yes.
Versus the 150 that's currently being proposed. If we're going to be paying a engineering firm while simultaneously looking for a city engineer, why are we not looking to fully fund an engineering position, understanding that we do have reallocations throughout the year, but we could chew up a significant amount of the engineering services should a contract be approved this first part of the year once construction, once paving and construction season starts. We're trying to also recruit someone with, when you look at a city budget, you have $0 for the city engineer. If I'm an engineer looking at this budget that gets adopted and I'm looking to work for the city, and you tell me what my starting salary is, and I look at the city's budget for my position is 0.
Yes.
It's adopted.
Yeah, that is how it's listed. The rates that Dawood had presented range between, I think, $140 an hour up to $200. The way it's budgeting, we would get about 20 hours in office a week. We would look at that as something like 2 days a week that they would be in here full time, and then a number of other hours that they could be used for public meetings and different things like that. And that would still then leave a balance to be transferred over. But what we did not want to do was to budget that full salary and then do that in addition to it. What we wanted to do was get that line as close to, well, both lines, salaries and wages and professional services, to as real as it would be.
Okay. And I think this is a difference in philosophy in terms of how we're budgeting for a position of this nature. I mean, we lost a tremendous asset under the previous administration in this position. But again, if I'm looking at it, there's no money. So I guess I'll consider that for an amendment as we move forward, because an engineer looking at this, there's no funding for its position, and there's a guarantee of moving money. We know we're going to have to reallocate money. We'll get to another slide, hopefully, about all of the positions that aren't funded. But again, I think trying to budget to a number versus the realities of what a city has to deal with, it's evident in how this process is going that there's a little bit of a discrepancy in philosophy. Thank you.
Any other questions regarding this? Councilman Rodriguez?
Just more of a statement. Just to echo Councilman Major's sentiments, it just doesn't look attractive when we're trying to attract some of the best talent there is, because Harrisburg is the best city there is. So of course we want to attract some of the best talent possible to serve and service our citizens. So to his point, if I'm looking for the position and looking at the budget and it's allocated $0, possibly I won't even give HR a call for that. So just something to consider moving forward. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I do have a question regarding the engineer salary. Is that a competitive salary to attract candidates? Is that why we're not getting applicants?
It's very low. What you will see is if you've talked to any professional engineers, and just think of the hourly rates I had mentioned, anywhere between $140 to $200. They're getting in the private sector $150 minimum, $150,000 minimum, upwards to over $200,000 a year for that. So the salary it was always budgeted at in the 90s. You really did have somebody who was dedicated and did care about working for the city of Harrisburg at that salary. But it is very low, and it would require a very significant bump up to be able to have a full-time person with a PE license take on that work.
Which kind of leads to my next comment or question. Why wasn't it bumped up? If we can afford $150,000 budgeted for consulting, why can't we afford $150,000 for our own engineer that would be in-house dedicated to us? Understanding that we wouldn't be budgeting for the full year, even if the salary was listed at $150,000 and budgeted at $75,000, we'd still be looking to fund 6 months, we're already 2 months in, and it might take 4 months to find someone. To me, it's just not realistic that we're ever going to get a candidate, and then we're looking at relying on consulting until we do decide to bump it up, which will be next year.
I mean, yeah, it was just the way we strategically looked at budgeting for that position, but $150,000 would probably be in that range. We could have looked at putting $75,000 into it, but what we walked into was, with the way the posting worked, we would have needed to got this budget passed to get that salary up from 90, whatever it was, 90 to 95,000 up to that. We couldn't have waited that long because there are a number of projects that Percy has in dire need of getting that stamp for. So what we're hoping to get is you to pass the Dawood contract, and so we can get that signed so they can come in and instantly start reviewing those plan sheets, where at that point, if we did follow that path, we would have had to then taken the whole hiring process on, which in many cases takes months. but we could have definitely looked at, like you mentioned, $75,000 being put in there for the partial year in addition.
I would just make one follow-up kind of comment. You know, the philosophy is that we're going to do both. We're going to contract out and look to hire, but we're obviously not looking to attract an attractive candidate at that salary. So I would look to bump the salary up while using contracting in the meantime and really looking to fill that position.
And I think we could agree that is an optimal strategy if you were to look at wanting to handle it that way. And I think at 150,000, we would be able to get some candidates with the active PE license in the state of Pennsylvania.
Are there any other questions or comments before we move on to the next?
Yes, Chair Green. I just wanted to know what systems are used in the city to recruit, such as Indeed or fairs, et cetera. How do we recruit talent?
Joni's not here to answer that, but I know where it was posted in some cases because I asked. It was posted in LinkedIn was one of them. The city's job posting, the COG, the Council of Government for the general region, and then just I think some of the other ones like you mentioned, like Indeed. They're actively posted. They've been posted for the better part of months. So it's out there if you want to take a look at what the posting says in the job description.
Thank you.
I have two questions. Thank you. I was curious to know what the Bureau's diversity complement is.
Presently, we have over half our staff are African American. 10 of us. So I'm going to say about 6 or 7 of us are African American.
Are you all males, or are there any females that work in your department?
There is one female that works in our department in the traffic and engineering aspect of it.
Okay. And are any of the current employees bilingual?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions for the engineering department? Traffic and engineering department. I guess I do have kind of a question for the traffic side. If someone wants to report a street light that's out, or if they're having issues with street lights blinking, I know on 17th Street for a while, it was like a street light that just would not stop blinking. It was like a strobe light. How would they report it, and how would they, I guess, track the progress or see if it's being followed up on?
So they can call the 311 and report it to customer complaint. Also, I am out there 4 or 5 in the morning. I see people walking for exercise. I give them my card, ask them to call me directly if they see anything while they're about. We adjust the team's hours with the daylight saving to get us in earlier while it is dark, so they can also see what's going on.
Thank you. I would suggest maybe working with the IT department to see if we can get something online where people could report it online. Just what's, if they have a street light that's out, or if they know of a street light that's out, just because it's sometimes just a little more convenient. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilman Rouse.
Yes, thank you, Chair Green. I was just wondering, good evening, everyone. I'm sorry if I did not say that. If the 2 gentlemen would just tell us your name and your positions for us and for the public, please.
My name is Percy Bullock. I'm the city's project manager for construction.
My name is Tom Marshall. I am the traffic manager for the city of Harrisburg.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bullock and Mr. Percy.
Thomas Marshall.
Thomas Marshall, and sorry, I didn't hear you. Thank you. Well, good evening.
Good evening.
Are there any other questions? Councilman Majors?
Yes, I guess this is for Mr. Bullock. In terms, I know we were at one point we were talking about having a better system to notify residents of construction projects that were going on. Can you speak to that a little bit? And do we have enough in terms of our software budget to continue that or keep that moving forward?
every time there's a budget that's open, every time there's a project that's opening up, we do have meetings within the community. We've done that in the past. And we also put it out via our IT department, make it very clear when we're going to have a budget coming through, a project coming through. So we have some upcoming ones coming up that were continuous from last year. Again, we have the community meetings. We're going to continue having the community meetings and outreach, which allow the communities to reach back and forth from us to them. And also talk to those like Thomas does in the street when they happen to ask questions, thoroughly answer them, and I ask them if they have more. So I think we do a pretty good connection with the community.
Okay, thank you. And then, because we have so many documents, I think I'm looking at the document provided to us yesterday, traffic engineering. I'm looking at the budget units, 430033, which is street signs, and 430034 traffic control. And I'm just looking at the difference between the actual for 2021 versus what we have budgeted and what's would be included in the amended Exhibit A, which is our new document that we're working off of. So there seems to be a $77,000 difference in the street sign line and a $90,000 difference in our traffic control line. What type of projects are we looking to do on that? That's going to necessitate that increase versus what we've actually spent over 2021, since we seem to budget for quite a bit of improvements, but we're not hitting those numbers in terms of the actual spend down.
So as far as the street signs go, so PennDOT had changed the font regulations, and the city is far behind, as well as you drive the streets and you don't see, I'm talking particularly about the street name signs, several hundred missing. So that combined with the fact that the city had purchased a new printer to make signs 3 years ago. We just brought that online last year. The cost of the material for that particular machine is high. So that drove the cost up. But we're trying to catch up on the street signs that are missing and to move forward to get our signs updated. That drives the cost up.
Okay, and then the same process, I assume, is this process is still the same. So if an individual's missing a street sign, they can still call 311. Is there I know we looked at it, we have a GIS system that we're looking at for potholes. Are we looking at something similar for that residents can, do like some open data, put it into a system so that could help effectuate and speed up the process?
That's an excellent idea, but no, we haven't gotten that far yet now.
I have a follow-up question. I guess it's relative to the printer for the street signs. Do we have the ability in-house to, I guess I'm thinking from a marketing perspective, like print like large banners or are those things currently outsourced? I'm thinking for like our larger festivals and other events.
The short answer is no, that printer does not do that type of printing.
Okay.
We are discussing moving that way. I'm looking to get numbers to present to the mayor's office. I know that the banners are expensive. We're talking $300 to $400.
Right,
and I've talked to several residents. So the lifetime of those banners is only 3 years. They fade out quickly. So it would be a great service to the city if we could do that. But no, the equipment we have now does not do that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments for engineering or traffic?
I had a follow-up question after President Bowers. Is it in the budget anywhere for that type of equipment currently right now?
No, because that would not be up to PennDOT standard to use that money for that. So, and I hope I'm not getting out of line here.
No.
Okay, so I'm working on thoughts to get Rebecca to look for grants for that, because we could not use PennDOT money that we're getting down from liquid fuels to do that, to make those banners.
And do you know where she's at in that process?
Yeah, we've just started digging into see what was out there. And we're gonna need help from Chief Ederline as far as where that money goes, safety-wise or whatever.
Okay, thank you, because I look forward to seeing that as well. So, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on traffic and engineering?
Just a comment for the residents watching on the PP&L website as well. There are brief instructions to report down lighting or poles that have issues with specific coordinating numbers on it. So that may be useful for the residents as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for traffic or engineering? Seeing none, thank you very much for taking the time to be here tonight and sitting through some of the earlier stuff. We appreciate all the work that you do. If it wasn't for you, I couldn't see most of the times I was driving or know where I was going. So thank you very much for all of your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Bowers, Council President Bowers, I'm gonna get better with this. If we could have a 10-minute recess just to use the restroom.
Yes, it is 8:11. We will break for 10 minutes. Everyone, the time is 8:22. Our 10-minute break is up. Everyone could please turn to the dais. And we will resume. I will return the meeting to Vice President Green.
Thank you, President Bowers. I believe we are ready to move on to the neighborhood services section of the budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Neighborhood Services Fund, the first question from City Council was, please provide an update on how much revenue the Paxtang, Pembroke, and Steelton collection accounts are bringing to the city.
In just one moment before we get into that,
Sure.
just for the public's knowledge, this is also referred to as Public Works, correct?
Oh, pardon me. Yes, Neighborhood Services, the part of Neighborhood Services, Public Works. Yes.
Thank you.
My mistake, please excuse me. Are the costs of administrating these collections bringing in enough revenue to continue them once the contract expires? Actually, a related schedule on page 127 of the revised document, which includes revenues and expenditures from each of these three borough municipalities. This is the first time in history that they've actually separated those three funds so that the administration and city council can actually view the activity within those funds. And I have to give Brian credit for that, for making that decision to separate those out so it'll be more transparent for the administration and the council and the public, of course, to review and acknowledge those accounts under those distinguished accounts. Paxton Borough did not fare so well in 2021 due to significant upfront outlays occurring for the needed trash and recycling containers, or what we call toters, for supplies. But the other two boroughs, we didn't see that type of dip up in cost.
Excuse me. Are there any questions from our colleagues regarding this question?
Just one question. I know that Pembroke and Paxtang use annual billing themselves, and that makes the collections portion on our end easier logistically. But I know Steelton has a separate system that has caused some problems or issues. Can you speak to, I guess, has that been fixed, or is that still continuing to be a problem?
I'm sorry, for Steelton?
Yeah.
Yeah. We have separate billing system through Treasury for that, and it's a quarterly billing. And actually, the revenue, I believe the collection rate has been very satisfactory with the collections. And I think the schedule indicates that. I'm sorry I didn't make it back for the initiation of this question, but the revenue has been pretty consistent so far with that borough, and remains, as you can see, it's sort of leading the pack of the three boroughs as far as a good net revenue stream.
Okay. I just remember when we first started doing this, there was some issues there. But it seems like
there might, I think it may have pertained to the upfront funds that the general fund provided to the neighborhood service fund to get the materials that the borough, that the initiative needed to start that off. But I don't recently, or even from that time, I don't recall any difficulties, especially on the revenue collection side.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from my colleagues regarding this response? Seeing none, I believe we can move to the next question.
The next question is.
One moment.
I'm sorry.
Okay. I think we can go to the next question.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Please provide an overview and update of the annual billing. What is your time frame of getting this legislation passed? Currently, the Law Bureau is reviewing a number of options regarding annual billing. Once we have the ability to discuss potential legislation options with council, the mayor, treasurer, and controller will have them. We hope that the Law Bureau will have this work completed in February for us to discuss in a March meeting. If the legislation is passed in either March or April, it will allow the city treasurer, IT, and the Law Bureau enough time to have the implementation for the 2023 tax year.
Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues regarding this? Councilman Majors?
Yes, just one quick question, and I'm not sure if Brian, you can answer it, but I know when we were looking at the collections for Pembroke, I believe it's correct, on their annual billing piece, the borough itself makes the payment to the city, not the individual residents, correct?
That's correct, Councilman.
Right. So that, as we're looking to explore annual billing, that would look a little different for our city residents. It wouldn't be the city of Harrisburg fronting the cost for all of the city residents for their collection. We would be looking to, in the potential iterations that we've discussed in the past, or at least that were brought up, it was an annual bill to each resident. And then we were trying to focus on how to ensure what our collection rate would look like on the back end. And then we would have some sort of enforcement mechanism, because in the past, when our trash was tied to our water bills, when we had the water authority, there were mechanisms in place that compelled people to pay or make a payment or set up a payment arrangement versus what we currently have now. Would you, in terms of question, do you know what the current collection rate is for our trash bills as it's currently set up? Or is that more for Treasury?
Are you talking the city residents?
The city resident, the collection rate for city residents. The only annual billing we could implement would impact city residents. So I don't know if you or Mr. Spriggs can talk about what the current collection rate is for our trash bills.
Historically, I'm drawing on my whenever we approach the audit, that's part of the analysis, and I believe between 83 and 85% collection rate on regular city residential and commercial accounts as well, excluding the boroughs.
Okay. Yeah, all my other questions are more focused not on the budget on this, but on procedurally. So I can wait on those until we talk about an annual billing ordinance or legislation comes down. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from my colleagues regarding this question? Seeing none, I believe we can move to the next.
Neighborhood Services Fund, Public Works. What are the goals of the Public Works Department for 2022? Does the budget reflect those goals? The goals of the Public Works Department are as follows: to create sustainable bureaus that are completely cross-trained and efficient, tackle the blight and structural issues that plague the city, design a public works facility that is guided by my SMART system, I like this, of accounting operational excellence. SMART stands for safety, management, managers, A, accountability, articulate, R, responsible, respectful, and T, teamwork. And the MI is our own Mr. Briggs, who is the one that designed this for them. I'm just the prose reading it to you. So I'll respect and due diligence for your great effort here in providing a outstanding goal and objective and even an acronym. The 22 budget is not at all what I had hoped to receive. However, we just have to roll our sleeves up and get the job done. Thank you.
Questions or comments from our colleagues regarding this response? Council President Bowers.
Thank you, Vice President Green. Good evening. I do have a follow-up question relative to your one of your final comments noted that the 2022 budget isn't all that you hoped to receive. So what was your expectation with the budget?
Well, I was hoping to actually
acquire a couple of more labor positions. And so what my goal is for this season is to utilize every ounce of the liquid fuels dollars that you're providing us to pay. I want to go in and make an impact on our infrastructure. And in doing so, I was hoping to utilize the laborers in various departments within various boroughs within public works. So we would use them in sanitation as well. Let's just use them in highway and wherever else we could use their laborer skills. And I think that's a better resource than actually going after some of the more costly positions like heavy equipment operator, those things, because those skills are specific to large equipment, and we currently utilize them as labor. So we're not utilizing our resources as adequately or as well as we should at this point. So I figured that a lot of the laborers at the lower scale pay, in which we have multiple applicants for those positions, would utilize some of our funding and dollars at a more efficient rate.
Okay, so I did have a question about, I guess, when you intended to fill the heavy equipment operator 1 vacancy, but so you're saying that that's a no, but what about, I did see 3 new labor 3 positions, I think that were funded for. Do you intend to move forward with those?
Yes, so currently we absolutely intend to move forward with those.
Okay.
We actually eliminated 2 positions in the budget this year, so that will help fund the 2 of those positions. So that's going to help balance that out as well.
Okay. And what about the 2 new sanitation route supervisor roles? Do you intend to fill those?
Yes.
Okay. What quarter?
Hopefully as soon as possible.
Okay.
Yes.
What is the department's diversity complement?
The department is probably 90% African American, predominantly males. We have 1 Latina female, 1 Latino male, bilingual, of course, both. We have 2 Caucasian females, and 1 African American woman. Hope I didn't miss anybody. And we currently extended an offer to a Black female, to African American female, as one of our motor equipment operators. Will drive our truck. She accepted, and she's scheduled to start on the 28th of this month.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further questions from our colleagues regarding this?
I have one.
Councilman Rouse.
Thank you, Chair Green. Good evening, Mr. Spriggs. I wanted to know, what did you need in the budget to tackle the blight and structural issues that plague the city that you didn't receive?
Well, I was just considering a few more laborers that we could maybe have as full-time blight collectors, but the rail drivers is going to help us establish that. And I know we're making, we're trying to be equitable to every department, so I'm okay with that. I wear steel toes to work every day, so I can get out there and pull my weight as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilman Majors, did you have something?
Yes, and I don't know if it's going to be for Mr. Spriggs or for the administration. You'll notice that there are several positions in the department that have 0 funding. What would be that funding source? Are we still going to be pulling directly out of the neighborhood services fund to pull that, or are we looking to use any interfund transfers, lost revenue to backfill any of those positions? Should we be able to fill them? And I count 13 positions in terms of. It would have to
come from neighborhood services unless we did a transfer.
Okay.
Which, Brian, are you able to speak to the balance of neighborhood services?
That was my next question.
Because that will help you give you a little bit more.
My next question was to be the balance, and then put the balance support. Looks like there's 10 positions, and I just want to make sure I'm getting my count right.
I haven't checked that recently pertaining to actual current updated cash balance
Okay.
with the neighborhood services fund, but I can certainly double check that for you.
Okay, yeah, because there are 13 positions that aren't funded in the current budget under neighborhood services, public works. There's still several under parks management. We're just with Mr. Spriggs this evening currently.
On the last page of the handout that I gave you, we do, along with the firefighters and the police, we do have them on the ARPA consideration list because sanitation workers are considered frontline workers. And, but this is just a list for consideration. It's nothing more than that. But our hope is that given that they're frontline workers, first, not exactly first responders, but certainly they're the ones there in the middle of the night picking up the crucial circumstances that need to be keeping the city safe and sanitary. And people don't often think about sanitation as being public safety, but it clearly is. And if our guys and women and men weren't as brave as they are and out there as frontline workers. So that's why we thought we could, of the three that we can list, according to the law, we know that public safety and sanitation, and to the degree that you consider it public safety, could potentially be considered. So that's a potential other option. The neighborhood services fund balance, of course, is not as healthy as the general fund, but we certainly have tried to add additional jobs from the first draft that we gave you, so that we could indeed continue that excellent service that Nate and his team do every week. And by adding in those additional positions and that additional funding, albeit it being a little painful for all of us, it's going to be for the betterment of society and the betterment of the city, and certainly keep the streets clean and safe. Children are running about these streets during the day. And so we do think that that the ARPA money, if, in the broader spectrum was to be considered, those would be the three categories of any type of employees that would be considered for ARPA fund. And that is on that last page handout I provided.
Councilman Majors, anything else?
Last thing, I guess this is a comment, because it does come out of this budget. I guess, Neil, what's the timeline on filling the assistant solicitor for collections? Do we have any candidates currently?
We do not. We don't have candidates, and we don't really have that one advertised, I don't believe, because we weren't sure where that was going to fall in this process. So as soon as the budget is adopted, we would re-advertise that. It has traditionally been a hard position to fill and a hard position to maintain. We've had 3 collection attorneys.
Just mind coming up to the mic.
Sure, I'm sorry. I'm just tired.
I understand.
We've had 3 collections attorneys. The last one, Emily, who you knew, in her year here, brought in $500,000 in collections and $1.2 million in liens. The other 2, after they left, because the liens generated somewhere around $4 million of extra collections. It's a position that pays for itself very well, but frankly, lawyers don't go to law school to be collection attorneys. So it's a stopover for somebody, who wants to come in, get some municipal experience and move on, which we understand.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Rodriguez?
Yes. Director Spriggs, thank you for being in front of us today. Just want to say phenomenal job thus far that you guys have been doing with the resources that you're given. I know when I bought my home here early September, you assisted me in the issue I had. So thank you and the team on that. We spoke about identifying hot spots for illegal dumping throughout the city for a while. And it's to my understanding that we've had the proper cameras to install for some time. What are your plans to install them? And how can we maybe get some metrics from that as we use them?
So I had a conversation with Anna Montgomery from Codes earlier this week. And one of the things that we decided, along with speaking with Mayor Williams, is that we're going to allow Codes to pick some of the hot spots, and we're going to go to traffic engineering and have those cameras installed. I have those cameras currently at the Public Works building. Awesome. And so when we label some of these locations, we're also working on a system in which the Public Works Department is not constantly carrying out blight. We're going to give the Codes Department a chance to cite some of these owners, and so we can generate some revenue for the city, in response to just using taxpayers' dollars and just constantly pick
Absolutely.
up illegal dumping. So, and while we're on that, we just cleaned out, we had a massive illegal dump site in the 200 block of North 14th Street today. It was huge. It was, and according to some of the neighbors, it was sitting there for more than 10 years.
Wow.
Just on lots. And another thing we have to look at is, we're in a process of some of these positions that you talked about, President Bowers, in reference to filling. They're going to go for the demolition process. Although codes assigns the properties, we actually tear them down. My department actually remove them. And every time we tear down a blighted house, a home, a dilapidated structure, that's more dumping room for illegal dumpers. So it's a constant chase. It's a battle. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that bit of education, because I'm not sure even the residents watching right now knew that bit of information. So that was helpful. Also, our EAC has quite a few great ideas. Do you plan on collaborating with that team as far as like a citywide initiative for beautification and remediation?
Absolutely. I haven't reached out to them yet because I want to get through this process first.
Absolutely.
I don't want to put the cart before the horse, and I just want to wait until we finished up here, and then I can reach out to them and just we can work collaboratively to
Sounds good.
solve some of the issues. Thank you.
And Councilman Majors, let me circle back to the collections attorney position. It actually, Neil, it is posted. It's been posted for about a month. And have you received anything from Joni regarding it?
Zero.
I'll check in with Joni tomorrow to see if there's anything there.
Are there any other questions or comments for the Public Works Department? I believe that's the last slide for Public Works, or are there more for Public Works?
Well, there's more neighborhood services. I'm sorry, Parks and Rec, sorry.
Okay, I thought that was the end of Public Works. Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you for the work you do. I look forward to working with you in the future. I see you guys always moving around, getting things done. And you guys do a great job. So I look forward to working with you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it?
You did good, man.
Should I, man?
Okay. Thank you. Excuse me, no?
And then if everyone is ready, I believe we're ready for Parks, Recreation, and Facilities.
Thank you. And of course, this was, as all the answers have been prepared by the Bureau Chiefs and so forth, including Dave Baker. For the Department of Park and Rec, why is there such a large increase in the line item for consulting? Our purchasing policies are now requiring consultants for the majority of larger projects throughout the city.
Are there any questions or comments regarding that response?
Good evening, Mr. Baker. How are you? The gray button.
Can you hear me? Yep. Good evening. I am doing well. Thank you.
Can you further explain the consulting we will be doing or that we're getting to do for the city?
Sure. Any large scale project that we do, typically they'll request the job go out for bid, and we'll need to have the scope of work for that job. You can't leave anything out whenever you're going out to bid. The onus is kind of on the individual putting the bid out there. So we hire the consultants because they are experts in the field that we are working in or we're trying to get accomplished. They'll write up that bid scope, and then we go through our process with our different contractors. So it kind of makes it crucial to get the consultants for, as I said, larger scale projects.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments regarding the consulting question? Or
so just to be clear, so is this kind of the work that engineering would have been doing before, and we just don't have the staff? That portion of developing the bids?
So maybe a very small portion of this engineer could have helped us with, but a lot of this stuff has much more to do with our procurement policies nowadays and trying to stay within the guidelines that we're given. A lot of this consulting work, it's, as I said, it's a specialty work. So even if we had a civil engineer, structural engineer, you're not sure which type of engineering individual you might need for these projects per se. So it's more of a specialty thing.
Any other questions or comments regarding this?
Yes, I had a follow-up on my question. What projects do you already have in mind or in place that you would like to do that these consulting companies would oversee?
So a lot of the projects that I can think of just offhand right now would be large-scale park projects. Obviously, if we're to spend hundreds of thousands or in some cases millions of dollars on these park projects, you'll have to have traffic safety plans done. You'll have to have, different types of long-term, short-term plans, just to make sure the entire project flows smoothly and you're not leaving anything out or obviously doing anything that should not be done when it comes to public health.
Okay, and do you have any parks in mind that you are looking at doing that with this budget?
Well, that kind of depends on how the budget goes, what's passed and what's not. I know we are currently working out at Reservoir Park. We have phase 1 we'd like to break ground on very shortly by April. And we expect to get that, completed in probably less than a 1 year time period. After we go to phase 2 for Reservoir, that would be the next large scale project we look at as far as parks go, but we do have multiples in the mix. And again, all that is dependent on what is passed for the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Rodriguez?
Yes, how are you doing, Mr. Baker?
I'm good.
Just for clarity, when you speak of phase 1 and phase 2, are we referring to the Chutes and Ladders initiative for the people watching at home?
Yes, sir. So phase 1 is actually our Chutes and Ladders portion of the Reservoir Park master plan project. And then phase 2 would be just specifically the toddler lot area, so the toddler playground and the extended parking lot with all of the green infrastructure included in it.
Thank you for that.
Any other further questions or comments regarding this portion? I believe the question was on the consulting line item for Parks and Recs. Seeing none, I believe we can move to the next question.
With the Department of Parks and Rec line item 452000, why was it zeroed out? Funds removed from this year to offset some of the additional costs of consulting in hopes that we would be able to start the projects in building improvement categories in 2023.
Are there questions regarding this from any of my colleagues? Questions or comments? Councilwoman Rouse?
Not on that, but to go back, I know you said, Director Baker, that Reservoir, the phase 1, where would that be at in the budget? I didn't see it, but I don't know if it's past ones. Can you further explain where that would be?
Yes, absolutely. So phase 1 is kind of a conglomeration of multiple different funding streams. We've received CDBG funding. I mean, we've received numerous different funding sources for that. So phase 1 is completely paid for at this point in time.
So phase 2, is that something that needs to be in the budget, or is that through other grants or things that?
So for phase 2, just like phase 1, we always do our due diligence to make sure we use as much grant funding as possible. Phase 2 would need a $250 general fund contribution, but with that contribution, we would then receive a 1-to-1 match from DCNR, which then would continue, that funding stream. We'd partner with CRW. There's multiple forms of funding to complete probably the upwards of around $1 million we get, but we would need that 250,000 seed to start the process.
Okay, so maybe then I direct it to administration. Is that in the general fund for phase 2? If we do phase 1, would we need to do phase 2?
It's possible that might have been what the grants manager was saying, talking about yesterday, that the match is another grant. But
is there a way to double check it just to make sure we don't break ground for phase one? Well, we don't get to phase one, but then we're unable to get to phase two if we don't have it in there. We can't apply for the grants to get it matched, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. I mean, we started the process. I mean, this is years in the making for the Reservoir Park Master Plan. So once you start, you really don't want to stop. You don't want to tell your donors that, hey, yes, we know we're eligible. We know you're willing to give because we started and but we can't continue. So that wouldn't be advisable.
Would that be information you could let us know if it's there so we're able to proceed to phase two after phase one?
Again, this is another one I'm relying on my previous knowledge, but I believe on that project that's all accommodated in the state grants fund, okay, where we receive funding from both DCED and DCNR, and I know Dave mentioned the phase one project is complete, and I believe we've exhausted the grant funding on the DCED side, but there still are available funds that Parks and Rec is aware of on the DCNR side. There's still grant proceeds that have not been fully liquidated or distributed. So, but that's something I can further review and check back with you on, follow up.
Yes, please, just so I know the project's been going on underway for some time, and I know for the public ready to being able to enjoy the Chutes and Ladders.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and now that and again, the two funding sources I mentioned in my recalling, that is specific to Parks Playground improvement projects.
Okay.
I believe there were I want to say there were five different locations.
Yes.
Okay, I think I'm on the right track.
Okay. Thank you very much.
One thing you might want to keep in mind is that, as David said, the fact that you have done some master planning and some significant parks planning, the Department of DCNR, Conservation and Natural Resources, they look very fondly upon that you have established your groundwork, you have developed a mission and a strategic plan, and you've started the project. And so they're much more likely to be willing to work with you as potential grant recipients. Your C2P2 grant opportunities coming up here in the spring. I know that, I'm sorry, Rebecca had to leave, but I know that she's kind of looking to that, and I certainly support that concept. But the fact that you've done your groundwork, you've done your due diligence, you've shown that you're doing a strategic parks planning process. It's been pretty extensive. You paid a lot of money for it. So I think that puts you in the driver's seat in the fact you already have the process going, you have the process moving in the right direction. So I do think the probability of more funding is certainly on the horizon, but the likelihood of getting it this year for 2022 is probably slimmer than if we were to have it geared up for next year more aggressively.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before we proceed to the next question? Seeing none, we can proceed.
For the Department of Parks and Rec, line 454004, why is it zeroed out? The hope is that we can invest in playgrounds using some ARPA funding. Now, of course, we have to have that fully evaluated. I don't need to keep repeating myself in that process, but it is something that potentially could be considered, but we'd have to vet that not only with the consultant and the procedures and policies for the grant, but through your public input and the input from the administration and the council. So that's, in other words, that's a little bit of a long shot.
Any questions regarding that response? Saying none, we can move to the next question.
For neighborhood services, Oh, for neighborhood services, 453,004. Why was it zeroed out? We had moved the funding to another account in order to offset deductions in other areas.
Could you elaborate a little more on that?
Yes, absolutely. So we, obviously the administration did, a rather hard job of trying to balance the budget this year. And while they were doing that, obviously they had to take certain amounts of money out of different categories. Some of these categories, unbeknownst to them, could not have monies removed from them. We need certain amounts to pay for things no matter what. It has to be done. So we removed some of the funds from this account, and moved them into the funds that were reduced to get them back up to the numbers they needed to be at to continue our day-to-day operations.
Okay, and does reducing this cause any impact to your department?
I mean, everything will cause an impact, but just like the Nate Spriggs just said earlier, we will get through it. We always have, and we will continue to do that. So we will manage just fine.
Are there any questions or comments regarding this response from my council colleagues? Seeing none, we can move to the next question.
The Bureau of Park Maintenance, can you explain why there are signing bonuses? This is the budget as a means to help us recruit positions, but Dave is certainly the expert on this, could explain it a little bit better. I know some of it may have been past administration's endeavor to try to recruit and keep individuals for major projects, parks projects throughout the city, but Dave's really the person who could best answer this.
Maria, if I may, I think actually for the parks maintenance piece, this would pertain to those employees that are paid within that budget unit that are ASME employees. So that would reflect the $3,000 bonus that's per the contract. So that's how that $45,000 was derived. Yeah, sure.
Any questions or comments from my colleagues regarding this line? Seeing none, we can move to the next question.
Why did the budget for park maintenance line item 452,008 decrease so much? Replacing the park shop building sign was a necessary deduction to help balance the budget.
Would you like to make any further comment on that?
Again, that's one of those items that it's not going to be a life safety issue. So obviously it's more of an aesthetics. So if there's an area to cut, in my opinion, that would be a good one to do so in.
Any questions or comments from my colleagues regarding this? Seeing none, we can move to the next question.
Explain the 300+ reduction in the Parks and Recreation Fund. After researching all budgets within the Parks and Rec purview, there doesn't seem to be any $3,000 reductions. Please provide more clarity.
Are there any comments or follow-up from my colleagues regarding this question? Seeing none at the moment, I will open it up to, I believe that's the last question for Parks and Rec that we have listed. So I will open it up to other comments or questions on Parks and Rec, but I will start. I don't know if this is a question for the administration or for the director, but looking at the position control, there are a lot of half a quarter positions in here. And there's nothing that shows where the other half or quarter is at. Can you show where it's at?
Yes, interestingly enough, during Act 47, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because he's in the internal, I was on the external. They made the decision to sort of split parks and put part of it in general fund, which is the part you're hearing from today. And then the second part is in the neighborhood services fund under park maintenance. That's where you'll find your park rangers, some laborers. So is that correct, David?
Yes.
So that's where the other side of the percentages are.
Did we cross-check to make for sure we have whole people?
Yes, it should be 2575.
I feel like something was missing, but
we could follow up and do some due diligence to provide further input, if that would help.
Yes. I will open up to any other questions regarding parks and recreations before I keep looking.
Yes.
Councilman Rodriguez.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, of course, COVID-19 was a pandemic no one can plan for, and it's hard to do anything such as moving forward. But as the director, how do you plan on or have a contingency plan for anything that may occur? This way our youth and families can still benefit from programming and resources.
So, I mean, currently what we've done is we've modified everything. We do our absolute best not to cancel, not to completely shut down. A lot of the individuals that utilize our services, it's the only service that they really have, and it's imperative that we continue with what we're doing. So we've reduced the numbers to try and reduce the groups, but we're trying to offer just as many things as we have previously. Obviously, everything, not just in the services that are supplied, but also in just recruiting individuals to work those services has become much more complex than ever before. But we're all kind of the same mindset when it comes to that. It's always public safety first, and then very, very close afterwards is trying to be the community betterment. So like I said, mainly the group size, and then how we interact with the public is another big one. We can do movie nights, we can do the swimming, but again, we reduce the number of individuals we allow in the pools at once. I mean, a lot of our after school programming is still there. It's still going on a regular basis, but everything has been modified. So absolutely everything has been affected by it. And, we just keep going. So.
You mentioned the pools. Last year we realized that the pump was out for the Southside pool.
Yes.
And it was currently on back order. And is it still the case? And if so, what's the ETA so we can have that ready? And then also, if we do get them open, do you feel as though we'll be in compliance as far as the complement of staff, getting them trained earlier this year and ready to go?
Yes, so fortunately, I believe the mayor will let us do much more aggressive recruitment this year.
Great.
I'm hoping that we have the ability to increase salaries, to maybe give certain bonuses or certain perks that we haven't in years past to try and entice a lot of the local kids to, come on board, because it's not just as easy as showing up for the job and just, kind of standing there all day long and then going home. If you want to be certified as a lifeguard, it takes work, there's a lot of work involved to it. So we do have a lot of brainstorm ideas. A lot of stuff's in the conceptual phase right now, but we are right around that corner that we will start really recruiting people. We've already started reaching out to different individuals, letting them know our thought process and what we'd like to accomplish for the year. We have our different goals we're going to try and hit. Like I said, the biggest thing in my mind is we will be as aggressive as possible with the recruitment. And then as far as the pool pump goes, we were fortunate enough to be able to utilize CDBG funding for that. The one pool pump, just one pump for one of these pools, it was over $8,000. So that one pool pump was installed, and our internal staff, our facility staff, actually went out to the park or went out to the pool and has finalized the electrical whip that needed to go be like custom made for that particular pump. So once the weather breaks and we stop getting a hard freeze, we will start testing everything out. We'll go out there, we'll check shell, stability. Hopefully there's no major issues. And as long as everything is half decent, we deal with small problems all the time. We will hopefully be up and running.
That sounds great. And I know there's quite a few entities and citizens that wouldn't mind helping to paint or sand the pools down so they could look, as beautiful as possible. So always consider that. Also, speaking of which, there's many great entities and nonprofits in the city. Do you have a plan to work or partner with some this year and moving forward? And then also, will they be able to utilize some of the spaces that aren't utilized, such as the cottages at Reservoir, to have summer programming or art classes, et cetera?
Yeah, so that's where I don't want to toot our horn with our cohesiveness here, but this is where our different departments, although they might sound a little confusing, really mesh well together. We do have lots of different volunteer groups that we currently work with. Our city forester works with groups. They've put in, well over 100 trees they've planted in the past year. We have our parks maintenance staff that partners with lots of like Youth Day of Caring. They're out there with hundreds of kids, beautifying spaces. Same thing with Parks and Rec, and we continuously work with these groups. Out at Reservoir Park with those cottages, we do have pottery classes that go on out there, and they do have art studios that go on out there. So they're pretty low key, but they absolutely get utilized. They fill out permits with us each year, and it's something that I think people really do enjoy out there.
Awesome. I look forward to them being exposed and utilized more, because as you know, the families could definitely have some more fun. But thank you for your answers.
Yep, absolutely.
So yes, there is one, but there's an explanation for why it's only in the one. It's for partial year funding, and we're going to fully fund that half year funding for that position out of the general fund. In next year's budget, it will be 50% here and 50% in parks maintenance, and that's for the deputy director position for Dave. So that will be a posting for a second quarter for a third quarter, so July, 1st of July hiring. But that's where that's broken down like that. A good eye for catching.
Which page can you tell me which page you're referring to?
107. If you look right underneath Dave's line, it's a new vacant position. We're going to fund that for the half year fully out of general fund. And then in next year's budget, it will go fully online, 50% there. So that will stay the same minus a raise based off performance if Dave gives that. And then on 124, once we get neighborhood services where we hope we get it funding wise, that other 50% will pop up there.
Okay, thank you. And then I do have kind of a follow-up to there. So the janitorial supervisor, that's on page 123, is only funded at 25%.
It's if you go to 107, it's 75% on there.
Okay.
And the same with the laborers. They're in the general fund for 75%, and on the neighborhood services parks for 25%. And then, of course, Dave himself is split 50-50 between those two parks operations and facilities.
All right.
As a director.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Confusing.
Are there any other questions for Parks and Recreation?
Yes. Thank you. Good evening. I'm just curious, when do you intend to fill the 2 marketing and events assistant vacancies?
As soon as humanly possible. So, I mean, obviously, you guys all know that HR will be inundated with requests, but as soon as the budget is passed, we have the job scopes. They've been reviewed. I actually brought all the job scopes for the open positions for council if you'd like them. And that's something that would be crucial for us to fill as soon as possible.
Yes, we would like them. What is the department's diversity complement?
So currently, we are in the winter months, so we have a total complement of 39 individuals. We have 8 women, we have 31 men, we have 19 minorities, and we have 10 total bilingual individuals.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on Parks and Recreation?
Yes, I had one for the pools. So I did hear you speak about getting the new pump for the pool out the south. But then when I was looking at the budget, there was no anything budgeted for pool improvements. So I was wondering if there's a future plan for the pools, if we're not improving them at all, or just why that was zeroed out.
Administration. So I think at this time, we will have to take our lead from the administration and see what their plans are, whether it be to open up some sort of a recreation center or spray park, spray pad, or continue to improve the pools.
Dave, that would be equipment for that would be covered under that, right?
Yeah, so those maintenance costs, there's no improvements.
Yeah, so with the pumps, that's covered under there. And as we look towards the pools, splash pads, however we want to do it, that's where we're looking at the public feedback for the park money. We don't want to make any decision on how we want to, either fully replace or close them off and do a splash pad, or however we want to do that until we figure out what the public wants through that money.
And that would be encompassing both pools on the conversation that you had.
Yes. The future of those would be covered in that.
Okay. I had 2 more questions, either for admin or Mr. Baker. But actually, this one is for admin. I was looking in the budget and I had seen that for tree service technicians, it was about 3 or 4 new positions for $1, $2, $3, and $4. So I was just, if we were hoping to attract any tree service technicians, I don't think I would apply. So I was just wondering what that encompassed. Like, what did you mean by that? It's on page 124. I'm sorry, I should have gave a page. I do apologize for that. Yeah.
Those were all new requests.
I believe they were all meant to be unfunded because they are on the unfunded list that you sent us.
Okay. Yeah. So they should be 0.
You look same page. I know those $1, $2 amounts that they're odd appearing there, but the columns to look at would be the 22 salary and the FICA payroll expense, and they are zeroed out.
Okay.
Does that clear that for you?
It does. It just it did look confusing because with the other totals there, but now I do understand what you're saying because you're looking at the salary. Okay.
Those odd dollar amounts were just a misinput into the schedule, but those. So from this review, those positions are zeroed out.
Okay. Thank you. Sure. And my last question was, how many park rangers do we have?
We currently have 3 park rangers on staff.
Okay. And I know Harrisburg is not a big city, but it's big enough. And how many parks do we have?
Currently, we have 27 parks, playgrounds, and 2 pools.
Okay, so is there a compliance that you have to be within when you have that number of parks and pools? Do we have enough rangers?
So we don't have a legal compliance we have to go by. We do have NRPA national standards for park safety and green space safety measured by population size of the city. We are definitely way under on those, but as I said, they are not a legal compliance we need to meet.
Okay. Well, how many are suggested?
I mean, I could do the calculation and look up. It would probably be 3 or 4 times the amount that we have right now, if you follow the NRPA standards.
And are we looking in the future maybe for admin to get more park rangers? Because sometimes parks I know are an issue, keeping them clean and maintained.
It could be funded, and it could be a potential amendment if you are interested as a body in adding park rangers. But yeah, there is interest in it from us collaboratively as a whole. That's why we have them listed there as a potential option.
That is another opportunity for Department of Conservation and Natural Resources to possibly look at considering grants with them for individuals. They do fund some positions. It's rare, but in the case of a park ranger, so that's a possibility. And I hope to have Rebecca look into more options. So we have a little bit of time before we have the full robust summer coming up. So hopefully we could maybe see some grant funding for those positions. It's one of those austere measures that you make that you want to make the best possible decision with the highest level quality of service, but also, stay within the balanced budget, so to speak.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification.
Councilman Rodriguez.
Just one final question. I noticed a small reduction in the chemical line item. Would that be sufficient enough to ensure our kids stay free of any pathogens or bacteria while they're swimming, especially at the high peaks of swimming?
Well, I mean, you got to kind of give and take a little bit. So yeah, absolutely. That what we've done is in the past year, due to COVID, due to our reduced numbers, reduced load in the pool, we have not had to use as much chemical as we typically would. Because of that, we do have a very small surplus. You can only keep them for so long. We can only keep certain chemicals for so long, or shelf life. But I do believe that even with the reduced number there, unless chemicals have skyrocketed, we should be able to safely maintain the pools at the right levels throughout the year.
Just a reminder, we were operating only on one pool, so if we're considering both, yes, there may be a slight adjustment. But thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. I will ask if there are any questions regarding the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Facilities, which includes the Bureau of Park and Recreations, Bureau of Park Maintenance, Facilities Maintenance Office, and the Special Events Office. Does anyone have questions on any of these before we end this portion? Seeing none, thank you for making yourself available tonight. We appreciate the work that you do. I'm sure that the youth and the families in our city appreciate the work that you do as well. Thank you. I believe that ends our slide presentation, but I believe the administration was going to go over some of the smaller funds, including our host municipality fund, as well as the Senator's Fund. And if you could just give an overview of each of the funds.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Chair Green. I'll reference page numbers to help this. This won't be very detailed, just to give you an overview. Starting on page 115, this is one of the city's 2 special revenue funds, State Liquid Fuels Tax Fund funded by the annual allocation from state, the PennDOT allocation, primarily focused on the bigger expenditure item would be the streets and roads efforts. The city still has ongoing projects. And that we budget that based on, of course, that allocation is the prime revenue driver of that fund. Next, I moved on to the second special revenue fund, the host municipality. Well, I'm sorry, any questions on the liquid fuels fund?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Page 119, the host fee fund. Again, there's another consistent revenue source that we receive from the Solid Waste Management Authority in Lancaster. That's a quarterly fee. There are personnel position control items in this fund where individuals are paid out of this fund, including a sustainable coordinator, arborist positions. And there is some environmental efforts down below in the other major category, where we have grants to grant distributions to local units, a matching share grant category, and also community cleanup line. And again, we base expenditures on the recurring revenue that comes in on the host fee fund.
Any questions? Councilman Majors?
Yes, just one. Notice the arborist, full-time arborist is, no, we're looking to fund that fully out of that. Never mind, I was late, my eyes are all over the place, so no questions. No, never mind. I'm sorry. So we'll be funding the arborist fully out of the host fee fund. And last year it was not fully funded out of there.
It was split funded last year.
Okay. So we're fully funding the arborist position out of the host fee.
All right, moving on. Actually, let me just backtrack to page 112. These are the more typical governmental fund types, and the debt service fund on page 112 is self-explanatory. Funded mainly by the general fund to accommodate the city's still existing debt. And those debt items are categorized at the top of that schedule.
Any questions? I believe we can move to the next. Thank you.
Sure. Next would be Capital Projects Fund on page 113. Revenue side is grant proceeds driven. And the expenditure side, again, is a primary focus on the city's ongoing streets and roads projects. On the next page is a summary of those current projects allocated to this fund. And the bigger projects that have identifiable grant sources that are the previous city engineer developed for the 2021 budget, developed a spreadsheet that identified not only these projects, but the involved grant funding. And that's what we based this particular presentation The Mulder Square project has an RCAP grant tied to it of $2.4 million. The next two lines, 7th and 2nd Streets, include PennDOT, I can say it, multimodal grant funding. Also, there is a smaller portion that's still oncoming from or receivable from Impact Harrisburg. The East-West Connector project has DCED grant funding tied to it. That is $500,000. State Street, that's another, there's a lot of PennDOT grant funds in play here, including State Street. There's a $500,000 grant that's specific to that project. And Capital Gateway, also from PennDOT, there's federal funds available of approximately $763,000. The big ones are that have been going on that really got underway back in 2021 include 7th and 2nd Streets through the multimodal program. And those are reimbursement in nature, where the city has to incur the expenditures, pay the contractor, and then we turn that around back to PennDOT to get our timely reimbursements.
Any questions regarding this one?
Yes. Do we have a specific timeline as to when these projects should be executed? And if so, how are we relating that to the residents?
Well, that would be really a better question for the guys from engineering that were here. I'm looking at the numbers that we have awareness on what is still planned. I don't know, for example, if these projects will be complete by the end of the current year. But I would think whether it's Percy or Tom, they would have better working knowledge of that timing.
I wish we could have definitely covered that while they were here, but that's
yeah. Yep, I appreciate that.
Any other questions? I believe we can move to the next one.
So we've covered all the funds. Sorry, except I was going to move to the special funds, but you mentioned Chair Green, the Senator's Fund. That's on page 136. That's another one of this is city's proprietary funds. This fund was instrumental in accommodating the debt service on the fees bonds that happened back in November, the stadium improvement bonds. And again, I've mentioned that that's no longer, the fees, they're no longer a liability on the city's books. And now we can turn the attention to the other purpose of that fund, which is to make available funding for capital improvement needs that would be occurring at the stadium. That relates back to the park permit fee document or park permit document that calls for the city's responsibility on capital improvement costs that may arise. Also, there's an annual improvement. It's been referred to as the annual improvement fund, but it really is an annual improvement amount, which is $25,000 to build within the fund, which we're actually implementing with this budget to start that process, to build such a fund to also be available for when capital improvements arise. So we budgeted $100,000 for the current year, which would be in addition to the $25,000 annual improvement amount, which is already on deposit for the first time, really, within this particular fund.
Any questions? I believe we can move on.
Last set of funds would be the 7, they're not special revenue funds, but we refer to them as special funds. One Page 137 is the blight remediation, also has been referred to as neighborhood mitigation fund. There's three primary budget units that you can see scheduled there, including salvage, permit penalty, and the foreclosure property registry. Again, we look at our expenditures for the current year based on, we look at the actual revenue that occurred in the prior year. It's a formulated basis for what we believe potential expenditures will be for 2022.
Any questions? I believe we can go to the next one. Thank you.
Page 138 is the special events projects reimbursement fund. It's more of a public works fund. It's again made up, this one's made up of, there's a segregation of revenue, but the main budget unit is the public works projects budget unit in the middle of the schedule. And the city does receive recurring recycling funds from mainly two sources: consolidated scrap resources on a somewhat monthly basis, and also the Harrisburg Paper Company for cardboard revenue, recycled cardboard. So again, we look at those revenue sources as they occur on an actual basis to generate a formulated budget for the current year. Again, trying to match revenue and expenses.
All right, any questions on this?
You had mentioned Public Works utilizes the special events reimbursement fund. Is that correct?
That's how I would classify it, the nature.
Would that be the same for the blight remediation fund?
That one would be, that's a good clarification question. That's more of a codes type.
Would we be able to get clarity for that whenever the administration gets a second?
Oh, sure, but the blight fund, it really is, it falls under codes purview, because we actually encumber funds in this fund for demolition needs or emergency demolition needs.
Wouldn't that be Public Works, since Public Works executes the demos?
Well, I believe it starts or initiates in the codes department.
Okay, thank you for that clarity.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments? I believe we can go to the next.
Page 139. I know Chief Enterline's not here, but this is the Fire Protection Fund. Two main budget units, including his SHARP team and the Urban Search and Rescue budget unit. The activity is not very strong based on prior year review in the Urban Search and Rescue. But the SHARP team, we have a budget, again, based on revenue that approximates or that is $11,500 for current year 2022. And actually, I reviewed this with the chief, and he was comfortable with this presentation.
Any questions? I believe we can go to the next page.
Next up would be the Police Protection Fund. Two budget units involved here for the training, police training, and also police projects. Again, minimal activity in the police projects side. The police training is mainly funded by the state police reimbursement amounts that occur under Act 120. And when those proceeds become available to the city, they're utilized for training needs through that program, which is an eligible expenditure under such revenue.
Any questions? Seeing none, we can move to the next. Thank you.
Sure. Page 141. And Dave, after I sum it up here, feel free to make any, you think, additional comments that may be a better additive. Three main budget units based on activity that has been recurring consistently over the recent years, including one for City Island, Reservoir Park, and the Highmark funding program. one of the questions I believe noted that there was a reduction in budget, $300,000 reductions. I think it's the last question up on the screen. But what we did as far as generating a budget for 22, again, looking at actual activity for City Island, we had in actual expenditures $48,300 in 2021, but we're budgeting $121,000. Again, based on the revenue that we see as reasonable. Reservoir Park, even though there was no activity on the expenditure side, there was revenue that came in. So we've developed a budget of $11,000 for current year 2022. The remaining budget unit is the Highmark program, which is a contribution from Highmark, and that funds the summer youth program that happens for the city, which explains why there are personnel costs. Those would all be temporary workers working that program. And again, we have actual activity in 21 of $32,100, and we're budgeting $50,100. What I'm trying to show is that we're actually budgeting a bit higher compared to actual activity in the prior year. This may be less than the 2021 budget, but again, we're looking at taking the same approach here as we've been doing for the general fund to try to look at it from a revenue side to build a budget basis.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilwoman Rouse.
Thank you. When speaking of City Island and revenues, I was just wondering, and this might be more of a question for Mr. Baker. We're around a few colleges here. Has there ever been any outreach from any colleges that would want to lease or rent or utilize City Island as their home team field in a way? I hope I'm phrasing that correctly.
So we have a ton of interest in City Island, whether it be from higher education learning or private groups or nonprofits, you name it. City Island is a super popular place. So yes, we absolutely do. We actually met with Central Penn College not too terribly long ago, but they do have some requests for us, and I think that it's a possibility. But yeah, City Island, the biggest thing with City Island is just the infrastructure and the upkeep of that. But it is very popular, and there's a ton of interest throughout all different aspects.
Thank you, because I know that could bring us in more revenue, but like you said, with some improvements, which I think the admin said would be in talks about improving some things at City Island. Correct? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions before we move into the next fund? Seeing none.
Page 142 is the WHPG TV fund. Very minimal activity. There's this very small fund. By example, only total of $29 in total revenue last year for the two. Again, there's a revenue budget and an operating side for the expenses. So what we have for 2022 is essentially a $1,000 budget for both revenue and expenses. I'm not too strong on the revenue generation other than any type of recording or audio visual packaging that the TV station would do that would benefit the city.
Any questions?
Sorry, more of a statement. I would highly encourage us looking into how we could really utilize WHBG 20 to really gain some revenue and get some local talent. And, of course, within the guidelines, I understand there's a parameter and you have to follow a certain guideline, but also I highly encourage there's some things we can do to generate revenue through the channel. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we move to the next fund? Seeing none, I believe we can move on.
Very good. Page 143, this is the final fund, events fund. Two main budget units. The so-called events would be the ongoing planning and production work the staff do for the holiday events, funded by contributions and donations and license and permitting revenue, which covers the holiday events, which are listed there: 4th of July, Capona, other various minor events. And also in the middle, a separate budget unit specifically that was set up for Arts Fest. And the same evaluation to budget based on revenue that we utilized for the Parks and Rec Fund was applied here, because they're very similar under Parks and Rec purview.
Are there any questions or comments concerning this fund?
Just a brief question. Where does our holiday parade funding usually come from?
I believe that includes, I don't know I can't name any of the entities, but it's either sponsor related contributions. Primarily that would be sponsor contributions for the holiday parade.
Typically not pulled from any of these funds we're speaking about tonight.
So this fund, the beauty of this fund for the entire special events department is they are 100% self-funded. So everything you see here, the expenditures and the revenues, as long as they add up, there's no cost to the taxpayers for this department.
So the parade funding would potentially come from here? Was the question?
Yes, any special event that this department puts on for the city is 100% paid for by donor support. So they get the donations before they actually do the event, or they get permits, or the vendor fees or whatnot to do the event. So it is completely paid for.
Understood. Thank you.
We're also budgeting on the revenue basis, but we're increasing the budget over prior year actual, being encouraged by the revenue sources being strong and somewhat improving for the current year.
Any other questions on this fund, Councilman Rouse?
Yes, thank you. I know growing up with the Capona, there were like games and rides at different entities. And I know with times things have changed, and then with COVID. So I was just wondering for this year for the Capona, is there any new avenues being taken? Are there more small businesses coming in? I know there's food trucks there, that those are small businesses, but other ones that may sell other products. Are there any looking into bringing the games back, or rides possibly, just anything different within the Capona?
So again, everything is dependent on what's going on around the world, but if we are still able to go 100% as normal, other than your typical safety protocols, we absolutely hope to have all of the original items back for Capona and be fully accessible to everyone. Hopefully, obviously safety, as I said, is always the first and foremost in our mindsets, but we definitely want to have it up to as large of a safe capacity as we can.
Great. I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that concludes
I'm out of funds.
I believe that concludes the budget portion of this meeting. I will send it back over to Council President Daniels. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Green. At this time, we'll open the floor for public comment. there anyone to my right who would like to offer public comment? Seeing none, anyone in the middle? Seeing none, anyone to my left? Seeing none, just in terms of scheduling for the benefit of the public, Harrisburg City Council will host a work session on Monday, February 14th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. here in City Council chambers to continue discussions of the budget.
Madam President?
Yes.
Is the council requesting the presence of any particular administration personnel or offices to be present at that time?
What is your pleasure?
I don't think we had targeted any specific department heads, but if the mayor and the administration could be available, that would be much appreciated.
Thank you. Our next legislative session will be held on Tuesday, February 15th, 2022 at 6 p.m. here in City Council chambers. The time is now 9:48 p.m. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.